I think that the students maybe only focus on the result and they don't focus on the journey, and they try to connect the dot before starting the journey. For me, now that I know my story, it's so easy to connect the dots. But I don't know, 10 years ago, for me, it was impossible to predict that I would be recording a podcast with you about Fabrica today.
Hi, and welcome to the How I Became a Perfumer podcast. In each episode, we explore the different roles in the flavor and fragrance industry, as well as talk to founders of independent projects. My name is Tanya Mironova. I'm a career coach dedicated to helping you sniff out the best opportunities and inspiring you to create your own projects. Feel free to book a coaching session with me using the links in the description box, and let's get started. My guest for today's episode is William Levi-Walle, fabric and home care perfumer at the US office of MAN, one of the worldwide leaders of the flavor and fragrance industry. William, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you for inviting me to the show, and really happy to be here with you today.
Well, thank you for accepting my invitation. I'm also very pleased. So the first question will be as direct as it might be. Who is a fabric and home care perfumer?
Whoa, that's a tough one to start. I would say that it's someone that is interested in perfumery as a creative process, but needs a real strong knowledge and understanding of science behind the perfumery, because with fabric and home care, we are facing a lot of technical challenges, and we really need, this basic scientific knowledge, I think, and to be really open to rethink our creativity through this more scientific process.
Basically, what you just said is, reminded me one of the YouTube yoga teachers who says, like, do you want a challenge? And it seems like this type of perfumers is exactly the one who wants challenge. Is it so?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm not saying that there's no challenge in the other categories. Just saying that it's maybe a different challenge for fabric and home care, because, for example, when I speak with my fellow perfumers of fine fragrance, we don't really speak the same language. I think we are doing totally different jobs, and that's something that has really changed, I think, now, because I really think that in the past, perfumer, they could really work cross categories and be good at everything. But now, as we need more and more expertise in each and every category, I think it makes totally sense to have like fully dedicated fabric perfumer, shampoo perfumer, and fine fragrance perfumer. So yeah, we work in the same field, but not exactly in the same team.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the world has become more complicated and the applications you work on maybe are more complicated than it was previously when one perfumer could work.
Yeah, the consumers are expecting more than they were expected before. And now, for example, in a bottle of liquid laundry detergent, you have a fragrance, but you have tons of technologies too that help the fragrance to be performing. And this evolution, the perfumer, we have to adapt, because if you start with a real good fragrance, you could have really bad surprise when you put that into your liquid laundry detergent. You will have to adapt this fragrance to the base. And for example, when you work on microencapsulation, which is one of my expertise at Man, it's a totally different approach. So if you want the smell to be the same, or to be performing in all stages, means that, for example, the when you open the bottle, when you open your machine after the wash, when you open a dryer, for example, in the US, we use dryers. And the consumers, they don't care about the technologies behind all this process. They just want the the fabric to smell good and to be performing. So we need to adapt our knowledge and our expertise to all these new challenges that are becoming real from our consumers.
Well, apart from hearing that you're working on a very interesting and very difficult stuff, I want to ask this question I have been having for quite a while, and you mentioned micro encapsulation. And some people will right now turn off the podcast because they will think that we go that direction. Now we will return to William's career journey. But I've recently read an article with one company which specializes in this type of technology, again, offering it to another perfume house, not as big as an influential as Man. However, is it so that each house has its own technologies in that regard?
Yeah, the thing is that all these technologies are patented
Mm-hmm.
by the house of perfumery. So, for example, I assume that a man's technology for microencapsulation is not the same as our
Mm-hmm.
competitors,
Mm-hmm.
and because we protect
Yeah.
our technology, they protect their technology, but the main goal is to deliver fragrance on dry fabric for everyone. So yeah, the goal is the same. I imagine that the science is not exactly the same behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you of course you have some um, regulation differences between regions, but for a company like Man, it is really important that our technology can be used safely in every countries of the world because our consumers are all around the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You're giving such good answers. Like, very up to the point. Everything is clear to me, and I believe to our listeners as well. So, since it's not a scientific podcast, but the career one, we will return to our questions. But thank you for elaborating on that for me specifically. I remember from our sound test that probably you've mentioned that you were interested in this particular type of products from the beginning, if I'm not mistaken.
But it has developed. I can describe, if you want, my journey because
Yes, please.
it's kind of a roller coaster. But I hope it can be inspiring for young students or people that just want to work in this industry. First, I never wanted to be a perfumer.
Okay.
Uh, like
Just you're not a typical guest already, so.
no. Uh, it's not like I actively didn't want to be a perfumer. It's like I was not collecting flower samples or
Mhm.
whatever as a child. I wanted to be a film director, then a rock star, then I don't remember exactly, but perfumery arrived really late in my life. I studied like science in high school, and I was not a really good scientist. I think it was because um, my friends were studying science, to be honest. And then I had the opportunity to visit a flavors company in the south of France, and wow, it was crazy because I could taste. I remember it was strawberry, apple, even something that tasted like meat, and everything came from chemistry. So there was this link between what I was studying and something that was somehow artistic.
Mhm.
And the head of R&D at the time, Vincent Carpentier, he told me about ISIPCA, the school in Versailles, when you can study flavors, fragrance, and cosmetics. Okay, this is what I want to do. And at the time, I didn't want to do perfumery. I was really into flavors, and now I don't remember why I changed my mind and went to perfumery. To be honest, yeah, I tried to enter to the it was the master at the time at Izipka. I remember something that a teacher from Izipka told us, a really famous perfumer. I won't say his name, but he told us that in this class, if you are not doing, sorry, your internship as a perfumer, forget about being a perfumer. It won't be possible. And it was
Mm.
so wrong, because you know what? I remember that in our class, there was only one girl that was doing her internship as a perfumer. I think in the end, we were like 20 students, and half of us are perfumers right now. And she's not a perfumer anymore, I think. So
Wow.
yeah, that was wrong. So there is
So
no path. I think there is no path to become a perfumer.
just one thing wanted to just highlight that somebody, just one teacher, told a thing which in your case didn't work out. So sometimes teachers might be wrong.
Yeah, I think it was wrong, but after graduating from Izipka, I didn't want to be a perfumer at the time, because I just wanted to work in the industry, you know.
Mm.
But I there was something I really liked about the perfumery. It was not the artistic part of it, but more the craftsmanship behind perfumery, because I see my job more as craftsmanship than as art, because I receive a brief from a client. I won't create the fragrance I want. I will create the fragrance my customer wants,
Mhm.
with some parameters like price, like regulation and everything. So
Mhm.
I'm not free to create exactly what I want, but I need to put my creativity at the service of the customer. It's exactly what I really like. Going back to Izipka, so I met this perfumer, Philippe Collet. Hold on to that name, because it's I think it's the most important person in my career so far. We had a really good connection, and he asked me, okay, you want to work in the field? He was working for Expression Parfumée, which is not so small, but at the time it was small, a
Uh-huh.
company in the south of France, in Grasse. And I had this interview to work as an evaluator at the time.
Mhm.
And I don't really remember how we ended with this idea, but they told me, okay, we really like your profile, because I think I was really uh, business oriented, you know, aware
Mhm.
of how the industry works.
Yeah, but also right now you are saying, just sort of interrupted, but that you see and feel these difference. You're the first person, in fact, who emphasized it during the podcast between art and craftsmanship. So you do see that the value you could provide to a client.
Exactly. And so they told me, okay, we want to open a new office in Mexico.
Wow.
Are you interested? We can like hire you in Grass for 3 years, and you will be working in all areas of the company. And this is what I did. I worked in the labs in evaluation in production for 2 months. You know, 2 months during winter in production. Even if it's south of France winter, it's still winter, and it's really interesting to be in the contact of the industrial part of our job, to see this these tons of fragrances flowing in the production facilities. And so I think that was key in my career, these 3 years with them, because I had a really good vision of how a fragrance company works, and
Mm-hmm.
the different interactions you can have in a company, and what our job really is, to provide fragrances for our customers. The project of new office in Mexico is Express Parfumé had an issue and failed.
Mm,
I worked with them for one more than 1 year as a perfumer, but for fine fragrance and cosmetics because that was their main field. And I love that. I love that because I was in the contact of the raw materials. I could think my formulas, and I think I was really thinking my formulas more as a scientist than as an artist. You know, I really liked small and really logical formulas. I would say. And then I joined Man directly in Mexico, and they hired me to work as a fine fragrance and personal care perfumer. And I think I was really bad at it because after 3 months, my boss she told me, "Okay, do you want to do home and fabric care?" And that was totally new for me. But yeah, I will take the challenge because I was feeling
right.
that fine fragrance and personal care was not really for me, and it was the best decision of my life. I think, because I think that when I started to understand how to create a home or fabric care for formula, it's when I truly understood my job, what I was, what I liked about my job. You know, the approach, the technical approach of okay, uh, for example, for a fabric softener, you need linearity. It means that the consumer, they expect the fragrance to smell the same on wet fabric and on dry fabric. So
Exactly.
it's super difficult because you don't have the same volatility of raw materials. So you have to use your creativity and to cheat a little bit, you know, to make them think that this is exactly the same molecules that they smell on wet and on dry fabric.
Oh, wow. But these are different.
Yeah, basically for I think it's more than the same for shampoo, for example, because yeah, the consumers are expecting this kind of linearity. Uh, for example, if you are creating a really basic apple for for a softener, you will create three apples, one for the open bottle, one for the wet stage, and one for the dry stage. So you can really go with infinite formulas. So then your work is to simplify and optimize everything. But yeah, it's complicated because you have to think about three stages when you are formulating one new fragrance.
Wow. Like looking at you when you are saying all that, I feel like you are either feel very cool that you are accepting another challenge every time. And yeah, you sound like a magician when you are saying all that.
Oh, it's more science than magic. That's the good news. I think that everyone can do that. But yeah, you have to be really really well organized. I think for to work in this in this category because raw material testing, for example, is key because you have to test some raw materials in different stages, open bottle, and you could have a terrible performance on wet stage, for example. But then on dry fabric, wow, this is super surprising, and I will use that
Mm.
for my development. And then you start creating like your library of accords that work well on dry fabric, and you play with that. It's really easy in perfumery, I think, to be like overwhelmed by the different approaches you have with a problem. And if it's easier to add new raw materials than to remove raw materials, but
Hmm.
I think it's much more efficient to remove raw materials on the formula than it is to add them. Because I remember when I started as a young perfumer, uh, you know, sometimes you just watch you review your formula and you just don't understand what you are doing because you have like I don't know, more than 80 or 90 raw materials, different raw materials in your formula, and it's a mess, and and you're losing time optimizing everything afterwards than if you were like working well, I would say,
Mhm.
from the start.
Wow, that's interesting. But I will use again the opportunity as a host to ask you one more technical question before we will move to another topic. But this technical question is whether those laundry detergents, I will ask specifically about them, which don't have smell, don't have scent, do they still really have a scent which masks this unpleasant scent which laundry products usually have?
Um, you mean, for example, yeah, the fragrance-free liquid
Yeah,
detergent? Yeah,
yeah.
no, I think that they just don't have fragrance, and the brands they have to work hard on the base in order
Hmm.
to make it less smelly than a regular detergent base. But no,
Right.
if they are fragrance-free, they are fragrance-free.
Well, thank you. No, one thing which really caught my attention when you were describing your, I would say, childhood, the time before Isipka, before you even find out that this profession exists, when you wanted to be a rock star, as it was in one of the songs, you realized when you entered this flavor facility that you want something artistic in your life to be present. I don't know if it's going to be easy to answer, but how did it feel? What was that for you?
I was not really thinking about it. I think as I had a really happy childhood and I was a really happy teenager. But I was not thinking about I want art and creativity in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But now I remember it, and I think there was always like art and creativity in my life. Uh, for example, as a kid, I was drawing a lot. Even later, as a teenager, I was drawing a lot. I for me it was like natural to play the music, um, and there was something for I was I've always been really into movies, but I was really interested in the the making of the movies, how they do that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's really linked to my approach of perfumery. And for example, one director I really like is James Cameron
Mm-hmm.
because he pushes the technology to the next level in order to create emotion in his movies. And
Exactly what you do at Man.
exactly what I try to do
Mm-hmm.
at Man with Fabric Care.
I really like this analogy. And, you know, another thing which really caught my attention about you, that you were accepting every challenge as it comes. We just want to ask whether you felt resistant at some points, like, oh, well, I want to do flavors and they are offering me evaluator job. Because in your story, it sounds like everything went very smoothly. You didn't feel any tension to this journey.
No, there are times when you doubt about yourself. Before joining Man, I was when the all this New Mexico's office ID with Expression Parfumée failed. I was really bad moment, I think, in my career because I was stuck. You know what? It's you have to follow your instinct. You have to accept that luck is an important player in your career because it's a small world. Fragrance is a small world, so you have to meet the good people. If I have not met Philippe Collet, for example, in Mr. Parfumé, I would not be there. It's a fact. But I think that the students, maybe they only focus on the result, and they don't focus on the journey,
Mm.
and they try to connect the dots before starting the journey. But
Uh-huh.
for me, now that I know my story, it's so easy to connect the dots. But I don't know, 10 years ago, for me, it was impossible to predict that I would be recording a podcast with you about Fabrica today, you know? So yeah, you have to follow your instinct. Every experience teaches you something about you. I remember this really like boring question during interviews when someone asks you what's your strength.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I love those.
Oh, how you know I'm a perfectionist. Now I really can answer this question because I know myself, and I know myself because all of the experiences I had in my career. So I think yeah, follow your instinct. Everything won't make any sense before you will be connecting the dots in 10 years, I think.
Well, that's perfect. I really love everything you've just said and reiterated many times. We know that your journey did not stop in Mexico.
No,
What was next?
in Mexico, I had two experiences. The first one was like a pure perfumery work for 4 years for home and laundry care.
Mhm.
And in 2020, I had the opportunity to become a manager. So I took the responsibility of the creation team. So I managed, we were four perfumers at the time. And it was really, really interesting because, as I said, I'm really like business oriented. Through this experience, I had the opportunity to, be involved in the strategy of the company, to know the customers, to see how you elaborate a plan with the management, with the sales and everything, and how you turn that into a fragrance that you will sell to a customer, and then you say your results, and we were really successful during this year. So I'm glad I could participate to this success with the team. Uh, it makes sense, you know. I really like when you have like this strategy, this plan to grow in a very very difficult and challenging area like fabric and home care, and with the creativity of a team, you achieve like a really really strong results.
I'm very happy that you really had this mindset which you could use in your work because like you're business oriented. Of course, it's a managerial type of thing which should be really present in the team. And the fact that you are possessing these skills and they were very highly assessed by your company, to me, it really deserves respect for both you and for Man for making these choices.
Thank you. And yeah, then after 4 years in Mexico, I asked for a change because life in Mexico City can be really stressful, and I did not choose Mexico, yeah, because mine they gave me two options at the time. It was South Africa or Mexico, and I was with my girlfriend at the time. She told me, okay, no, let's go to Mexico. So we went to Mexico. We really loved Mexico. It's an incredible country. Life, the quality of life you can have in Mexico is really good because the Mexicans are really friendly. There is no like a big cultural difference between European and Mexican. I think we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff in common. So it was really easy to make friends and to have a social life in Mexico. Um, and the food is incredible in Mexico. And I'm not just talking about the Mexican food, but in Mexico City, I've been to best restaurants in my life because
Well,
the Mexican, they are really good at mixing their Mexican approach to Korean food, to French food, Italian food, etc., etc. So it's really, really interesting, and it's a beautiful country to visit. It's
mm-hmm.
incredible. You have everything in Mexico. But Mexico City, it's one of the biggest city in the world, one of the busiest city in the world. 3 years ago, we had a daughter, so
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
understand that it was 3 years ago, but still you're a father. It's so lovely.
Yeah, young father, and yeah, with the kid, Mexico City can be tough, and
Right.
we wanted like yeah, a change, to find a place that could be not as fast as Mexico City with less commute. And so they offered us the opportunity to go to the US, and now we are in New Jersey. So it's a really small city, New Jersey. But I really like New Jersey so far because I think this is a really good balance living in New Jersey because you have all the good stuff from the small cities, almost countryside, you can go
Hmm.
hiking in a 10 minutes drive. You have tons of options for sports, for hiking, for everything. And you have New York City. It's like 1 hour from where we live. So it's a really good balance. It's a really good balance. You really like it.
Yeah, I'm happy for you and for your family that it happened. And also sounds like, that MON is just such a big company that they can allow themselves to have employees in different places and just transfer them that easily. Sounds amazing.
Yeah. It's all a process to move internally because I don't have the exact number, but we are a lot of perfumers in working at Man. So sometimes it's difficult to move, but yeah, they try to make things easy for you. I think the most important thing in a career is try to plan a little bit. You cannot expect a company to make it happen in 1 month. But
Hmm.
if you anticipate a little bit, they would try to help you because it's a win-win for everyone, I think.
I believe for you, it was very important to that the role your company took in this relocation. It's always great because I know that the relocating is tough. I mean, I've been relocating through Europe in the last like 8 years, 6 times. And I know that if you don't have a company which supports you in that journey, it might be a very difficult one, especially like with a family to a new culture. Luckily, to the same category.
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing is that the US market for laundry care is not so different from the Mexican market.
That was my next question. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Uh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, you know what? Because Mexico is North America. It's not South America. A lot of people think that you have all Latin America, that's a
Yeah, yeah.
big block, but it doesn't really work like that.
Because of the language and culture, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But I I I think that the Mexican market is closer to the U.S. market than it is from the Brazilian market. For example, Brazilian market is really different from Mexico, and I've been working on some Brazilian project, and I was struggling so much to understand exactly what I wanted because it was really different. And when I started working on project for the US from Mexico, but it was for the US. Yeah, some adjustments, but all the fragrances you had in your collection from Mexico, they you could use that as good starting points, and they'll try to build on top of this fragrance.
Have you ever thought, it will be my last question for this part, that you have, just the idea is that have you thought that your approach to things is really different than approach of many other people? So that have you thought that you really have some other skills, some other mindset, which helps you to work?
I don't know. I think that well, it's a tough question.
It is. But the idea is not exactly what you thought, but have you thought about it? Because when I'm listening to you, I feel like you are different, but it's my opinion. And I'm interested if people who have these different mindset have thought about themselves as having a different mindset or not.
I've never thought about it, about my mindset. As I said, going back to this boring question during interviews, what's your strength and your areas of improvement? Uh, once you know yourself, I think it's so much easier to build on your strength and to be just better at what you do. I think, and now I'm not trying to be someone else. For example, if talking about perfumers, you have this picture of really creative perfumers or really artistic perfumers. And I think that when I was really young, I wanted to be these guys, because that was the only reference I had for as a
Mm-hmm.
perfumer. And now I don't want to be this guy. I'm really happy
No.
that this guy do what they do, but I want to do my things differently. And I don't think that perfumery is for artists only. I think you can be really good at it when you are mixing your creativity and your scientific and pragmatic approach and business-oriented approach to projects.
This episode should be called The Art of Mixing, because this is still art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really love your answers, William, and I really love talking to you. And I have a few more questions, but in another format, like a blitz format.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So the first one ingredient you cannot imagine working without.
We have a captive at man, which is an exclusive molecular, which is called aqua. It's not the sexiest molecule ever. It's super strong for fabric care, but I couldn't work without that.
Perfect. Very interesting. We will also leave the link to this captive in the description. What's the last scent you smelled yesterday?
The last scent it was dish, a fragrance for a dish I made because I'm working on dish too, and it is citrus aromatic, really marine note. I wanted to work on marine notes.
That's interesting as well. Well, I always, when the guests saying something like that, wonder how it smelled, but I believe like in a few years it's going to be possible for us to smell things at a distance. So the most challenging fabric scent to create.
I think it's like gourmand notes, microencapsulation.
Well, I feel what you're saying because each time I smelled something like that, they smelled a little bit artificial. I'm like it may be not the best word to describe it, but
It's not about just about the smell only. It's the technical challenge it is to encapsulate this kind of fragrance because for encapsulation, I won't enter too much into details, but you have really strict rules for your creations, just in order to be technically possible. And all the raw materials you use for this gourmand kind of fragrances, they are all in the blacklist, So and this is when you have to use your creativity. So how do I do really direct vanilla for microencapsulated fragrance without using all this stuff?
Well, best fragrance you've ever developed for a laundry product, best in your opinion, not necessarily for the market or for other evaluators or perfumers.
Yeah, there is this fragrance that I tried in different bases. In the beginning, it was a liquid laundry fragrance, and then we tried that as a softer, and then I tried that as a scent booster, like the scent beads like you had during your process. And it worked in every basis. So it was a really good surprise to see that it's a really, really good fragrance that can perform in every basis in our fabric field.
Mm-hmm. So sounds like that if it's a scent booster, that it just highlighted the scent of other.
Scent boosters are like small beads with a really high amount of fragrance in them, and you add them to your during your washing process, and it just like deliver a huge boost of fragrance.
Wow. Okay, I got it. So thank you again for the comment. Not the Blitz question one, but still very useful. If you were not a perfumer, we already have a few answers to that, but what profession would you have pursued? Knowing yourself right now, I would add.
Film director. I would have loved that.
Maybe there is something you would recommend for the listeners to inspire them. Maybe not related to perfumery.
Whoa. Oh, that's tough. I will recommend a video game actually.
Wow, look, I couldn't have guessed.
A video game that obsessed me. It's not really famous. It is called Outer Wilds.
I've never heard about it. Interesting.
And basically, it is a video game that places you, as an astronaut, and you are like locked in a loop when the solar system will end after 22 minutes. Each time you die, you just go back to the beginning of the loop, and you have to find why the solar system is dying, and how to fix that. And I think it is exactly what I like about my job. It is a good mix of science because you are an astronaut and you are like you are traveling from one planet to another, and in each planet you will find a puzzle to solve and a problem to fix, and it asks you some really profound, I think, question like the meaning of life. Sometimes you just have to let it go. For example, when you hear the music that is telling you that the solar system is starting collapsing, and you don't have time to finish what you were doing, but you know that you will be able to go back in a few minutes. So you just wait and watch the solar system collapsing. And I think that it's really really beautiful, to be honest.
I'm totally bought. And like, is the number of rounds limited or not? Because like you said, that one round is 22 minutes. So you could take as many rounds as possible, or
Yeah, exactly. It's at the end, you could finish the game in theory in 22 minutes. If you knew exactly what to do, you could finish the game in 22 minutes. And
well,
and and,
perfect.
and what I really like about this game is that you cannot play it again, because once you know how to fix everything, you lose all the interest of the game, because you
Sure.
just rush and you finish it in 22 minutes. So it's not interesting. It's one experience only, and then you will have to live with the memory of this fabulous experience.
That was again a very special recommendation. So thank you, William. I enjoyed talking to you, and I really wish you all the successes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.